The post-mortem edition of the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, here to offer you a little therapy after the Chiefs get trounced 40-22 in the Super Bowl. With you as always, Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, NFL.com, Sam McDowell from the Kansas City Star. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB. Talking about Super Bowl 59, where the Eagles simply a better team. Patrick Mahomes, he took the blame on his shoulders. How much of it does he really deserve? Did Vic Fangio simply just shut down the Chiefs' offense? Did he crush Andy Reid in this head-to-head matchup? Was the Chiefs' game plan really the problem? Would a different game plan have made a difference? Offensive line, bigger problem we thought. What about the wide receivers? How much blame goes to this Chiefs defense? We're talking about it right here, right now, the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.
You are listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Sam McDowell is the sports columnist for the Kansas City Star. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by David Starnes Allstate Insurance, covering all the important things in your world: home, business, life, and even the fun stuff as well. Motorcycle, boat, ATV, you name it. Get with Dave and he'll have you covered. You can give Dave and his crew a call, visit them online, or stop into any of their locations, including North Kansas City, Liberty, and Branson, Missouri. Elevate your coverage, elevate your confidence, and drive worry-free. Don't put those insurance needs off any longer. Get with Dave. He'll give you peace of mind today for the things in your life most important to you. Now, here are the hosts of the Best Chiefs podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro.
Now, thank you very much, Curtis. Thank you for joining us here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. Chiefs don't win. It's ugly. The three-peat dies, and we're all forlorn. Let's start breaking it down. What do we think? Talking about where we're going to put the blame. Was it simply the Eagles were a better team, Jeff? You picked the Kansas City Chiefs. It's your fault. I saw from many people on Twitter.
You did.
That you cursed the Kansas City Chiefs. Are you willing to take responsibility?
You were wrong. You were wrong about this game.
That's right. Yeah, that's why I'm wearing black. Yeah. I said on the radio this morning, I'm heartbroken because I let all these people convince me to go against my better judgment and pick the better team. And so I'm right there with all you guys who thought the Chiefs would.
You're a loser.
You're wrong.
That's right. That's right. I'll say this. I will go with Andy Reid. I know the offensive line is the low-hanging fruit here, but he can call a better game that does not put them in harm's way. I thought when they came out in the first two possessions and threw 12 passes in the first 13 plays, went empty formation a couple times, that this was going to be a long day for them because they've been dying to play that style of football all season long. They thought they could do it against a team that, albeit did not have a great pass rush coming into this game, that they were not the 85 Bears until that game kicked off. And I think the Chiefs got beat by some of their own hubris. They didn't adjust. There were no screens. There was no run game. There was no moving the pocket. Their whole game plan was Patrick Mahomes was going to slice and dice you up, and our offensive line is going to keep him protected. And they were wrong. And that goes on Andy Reid.
Okay. Sam, let's so Reid, you're putting on the game, but we're going to get to that. You covered a lot of ground there. Let's start. The Eagles are the better team. You said that in your opening statement.
Yeah, they're the better team. they're the better team. Yeah.
You agree that they're the better team. Was it as simple as that? Right? Like a lesser team can beat a better team, but we're going to go through all these different things. But was at the end of the day, one of the things we talked about last week, I said, look, I think if the names aren't Mahomes and Reid, the Eagles are a 2.5-point favorite. But it's the fact that it's Andy Reid and it's Patrick Mahomes. And I mentioned everybody at the Super Bowl. I'm not going against Mahomes. Nobody give real football answers. They just say I'm not going against Mahomes. I said the Eagles should be favored by 2.5. I mean, after watching that game, you can make a case they should have been favored by 9.5, right?
Yeah.
They're a better team slightly, a lot. How big is the difference?
I think it's a lot. and I was surprised when I was down there talking to people who weren't from Kansas City. I'm talking to people who weren't Philadelphia people nationally, how much Philadelphia was the team they were picking. And it wasn't even a question about it. And you're right that they're look, if this game was played on Mars, and if it was the first Super Bowl ever, and
This is where I prefer to play the game.
Teams, I'm just saying, if it was played in a vacuum somewhere, and all you had was what you saw this year and what you saw on paper, Philadelphia would have been favored. And but that was the Mahomes had earned that, Reed had earned that, the Chiefs had earned that. They'd always found ways to win. But they were the better team. I did think coming in, I said this last week, I think they had more ways to win than the Chiefs did. The Chiefs' best way to win is what they tried to do, have Mahomes do something special.
Yeah. Sam, how about it? Eagles just a better team, or they just have a better day?
Well, let me start off with this, because I asked this question to you guys after the last two games, especially after the Buffalo game. If this game was played again the following week, would the line change? Would the Chiefs still be favored 1.5? No. The Eagles would be favored at least 2.5 points in this game. In the same way I said the Chiefs would be at least a 2.5 point favorite against the Bills after they beat them, because what we saw, I think, is I don't think you'd anticipate the margin, but I don't know why you'd anticipate the difference in outcome based on what we saw. And look, I mean, Jeff pointed out, I think on Tuesday's podcast of last week, that the Eagles were at least equal or better in every spot but one. And that one is the most important position on the field, quarterback. And so when I looked at this game, and look, I know you guys read what I wrote, and so you guys already know this, but I blame the quarterback. And look, it's Andy Reid's job to put the quarterback in the best position. It's the offensive line's job to put the quarterback in the best position. But at the end of the day, that's the one advantage the Chiefs had in this game, is their quarterback is better than the Eagles' quarterback. Their quarterback let them down in this game. He's the reason they're here. He's the reason they're two-time defending champions. But he's also part of the reason that they're not the first three-peat in NFL history. And I know we'll get more into that, but that was my biggest takeaway from the game.
Okay. All right. I think that is a big part of it, right? But that speaks to, when we talked a lot about this as well, what is the value? Like the better, everyone says, who's the better team? Well, they've got the better roster. Well, okay, but quarterback's more important than any one position, maybe any two, any three. Like, you got to figure out where it is. So I think, look, at the end of the day, I thought these two teams were pretty even. I think the Chiefs are capable of playing this game much better. We're going to get to the game plan part of it.
But Soren, like, to finish that, like, Jason Kelce said something during the week that he got blasted for, which was, he said that the Chiefs, comparatively to the Eagles, were deprived of talent. That they did, and people blasted him and said, "How could you think the Chiefs don't have talent?" Like, this is what he meant by that: is the comparison in talent. Other than quarterback, there was a difference in the talent that was on the field when you take the quarterbacks out of the equation. Like, he wasn't wrong about that. And that's the part that showed up in the game more than the quarterback difference showed up in the game.
Yeah, I would agree that the talent is better. But I think the talent is better on the San Francisco 49ers in the two Super Bowls that they've played, right? To your point,
yes,
the quarterback and the coach matter. But I think this was the epic fail for the Kansas City Chiefs, right? Are they, like, if they play this game 10 times, the Eagles are winning at least 6. I think it's 6 or 7. I'd put it at like 6.5. That's how I think they are. I think the thing that got lost, look, the Chiefs are very, very good and may very well be the second best team in the NFL. And I think that's one of the things that gets lost here. Is like Jason Kelce gets blasted because if you say that one team's more talented than the other, then the team that's not the more talented one takes it as you're saying we suck, right? That's not what he said. He just said the Eagles are more talented, right? And you can say that a team, I think they can be in this game. I think they can win it. Oh, you're saying they'll win this game every time they play it? No, I'm saying they can win this game, right? And I think in this one, I think the talent, the Chiefs earned a 15-2 record, a 15-1 record when they were actually trying. That's really impressive. They played a difficult schedule. They played every AFC playoff team. They earned their spot, and they're a very good team and may very well be the second best team. Yep. I think what got lost in the shuffle, because the three-peat carries a lot of noise. Taylor Swift carries a lot of noise. Patrick Mahomes carries a lot of noise. And the Lions drowned out the Eagles a lot over on the NFC side, right? Like, I think the Detroit Lions were the feel-good story. And so I think they sucked up a lot of the oxygen. I think this game may have had a different spread and we may have had a different view if so much of the conversation hadn't been about the Lions on the NFC side. Because now you go back and look at it, and the opportunity was there, but they're 16-1 in their last 17, and they barely lost the one that they lost. Like after a 2-2 start, they lost once, and they barely lost that game. Right? They were very dominant in the postseason. I think it was easy to be like, well, the Commanders are the 6 seed, and I think that's a fair point. I think that's part of the reason why they beat them so bad. It was also fair to say, well, you know what? They're really living by the turnover. What happens if they don't win the turnover battle? And I think the reality is the turnover battle was being won so demonstratively by the Philadelphia Eagles because of a talent differential with the teams they were playing, right? Like sometimes turnovers are just like, oh, kind of fluky, or wow, the peanut punch. Boy, the guy kind of exposed the ball and somebody got a good punch in there. The Eagles were really flying all over the field. They were pressuring quarterbacks. They were getting in the way of passing lanes. They were able to drop 7. They were taking the ball away because of superior talent and quality coaching. I don't want to minimize what they were getting coaching-wise. But I think in the end, the stories that we're all looking for, the Eric Eager, stealing somebody else's Super Bowl, right? Last year, the Chiefs stole the Ravens Super Bowl. It was their Super Bowl. They were the story all year, what everybody was talking about. So whatever the Chiefs were kind of lived in anonymity. This was the Lions Super Bowl, right? They were supposed to win it. Even though the Eagles were better, that's what everyone was talking about. And only at the end did everybody take the long look at the Eagles and go, you know what? These guys are badass. Like they are really a badass football team. And yeah, they were just better. I mean, I think it's this one should be pretty easy easier to walk away from than the Bucs game. Sorry, Jeff. Easier to walk away than the Bucs game, because I think you could look at the Bucs and go, if we'd had our offensive lineman, if you're a Chiefs fan, if we'd had our offensive lineman, we could win that game. They had everybody. Right? They had everybody. Like if they were better at left tackle, they didn't have anybody else. They tried everybody at left tackle. And so I think you can at least walk away from this one, and even the organization can, knowing they had everything they could throw at it, and it wasn't good enough. The Eagles were better.
Yeah, but I would argue that it wasn't just the Lions, and that those are all fair points. The Eagles made their own noise too. Look, they didn't really start going to Saquon Barkley until like week 5 as the main clog in their offense. Nick Sirianni had all kinds of stuff going on, drama, yelling at fans. You had the A.J. Brown being pissed off about the passing game. You had the Jalen Hurts turning the ball over early and then not throwing it at all later on in the season. They came into the postseason with legitimate questions. Like they were not what they were on Sunday night or even the NFC Championship game when the postseason started. People thought, do they have enough? People thought they were just Saquon Barkley, to be honest with you, and some really good players. And they proved that out. And I'm happy for Jalen Hurts and happy for, the other people who won Super Bowls and, the Brandon Graham and people like that who were around for the first go. But it seemed as if they got in their own way a lot. And then they found a way to get out of their way.
It's also speaks to why, I mean, look, all year long on this very podcast, we picked at the Chiefs' flaws for a reason, because we measured this team on a Super Bowl bar. That's the way they measure themselves. That's the way we were measuring this team. And that's why we picked at some of the flaws we did. I mean, I picked the Chiefs in this game. I picked the Chiefs in a lot of games this year. I think all but 1 or 2 games this year. And because head to head, they come up when the game's close and the final 2 minutes. I mean, they've been in those situations before. They find the winning moments, whether it's defense, whether it's a blocked field goal on special teams, whether it's offense. Like they find those moments, but they weren't without their flaws. This was the first team, though, that had the capability of exposing every flaw that the Chiefs had. The team that had the offensive line to expose the fact that the Chiefs were run by one man on the defensive line, which we all talked about all year. They were the team, and there's teams that took advantage of that. There's not teams that took advantage of that, and that they also were able to take advantage of the fact that the Chiefs' offensive line wasn't very good. The Chiefs were able to counter that, by running this short passing game. But the Eagles have really good cornerbacks. Like everywhere that teams have taken advantage in moments of the Chiefs that we've pointed out all year long, this is the first team that was able to take advantage of every area because they were strong everywhere.
I think that's a fair point. I mean, this was a perfect storm, and to give the final answer to it, yes, they were the better team, right? It's as simple as that. Philadelphia Eagles were the better team. It was going to take a great effort from the Chiefs to overcome it. And instead, they gave one of their worst efforts of the year, and that's why they got thumped when it was all said and done. When it comes to taking care of your insurance needs, David Starnes Allstate Insurance has got you covered. David Starnes Allstate Insurance, serving the Kansas City area and all throughout the Midwest. With David Starnes Allstate, it's not just about fender benders. Beyond traditional safeguards, enjoy perks like roadside assistance for unexpected breakdowns, transportation expense coverage when your car is in the shop, auto replacement protection to keep you on the road in style, and much more. You can give Dave and his crew a call at 816-781-7331. Visit them online or stop into any of their locations, including North Kansas City, Liberty, and Branson, Missouri. David Starnes, Allstate Insurance. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Locally owned and making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Let Gann educate you about the most cost-effective way to solve your parking lot problems. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warning. Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Find Gann online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. All right, let's talk a little bit about Patrick Mahomes. You mentioned him not playing well, Sam. This was a big one for you to bang the drum on. You came out pretty firing pretty hard on Patrick Mahomes after this game. He said he puts the blame on his shoulders. He said he didn't play well. How much of the blame does he deserve?
Well, I think a lot of it. I mean, I thought the offensive line was bad, but I thought Patrick Mahomes was worse. And I mentioned some of this on your show today, Soren, but I've heard a lot of the comparisons to Tampa, and I just think it's dead wrong because I thought the offensive line was fully to blame for that game, and Patrick Mahomes made the absolute most he could out of the bad circumstances. Here, he was inaccurate. He bypassed open receivers. I mean, he bypassed Justin Watson on 4th down. He bypassed Xavier Worthy on a deep post route. They looked timid to throw. He looked like a guy that, was running from ghost at one point in the game. His pocket presence was at an all-time low, I thought, in the game. And look, some of this goes into the game plan that he faced, but a lot of it goes into his own mental state. I thought in the game just got disrupted late in the first quarter. And he's a guy who's made a career out of bouncing back from in-game adversity. And instead we saw the adversity just totally overwhelm him in the moment. And so this whole team goes as that player goes. And that player, I thought he failed the game on Sunday. And like I said, I can't stress it up. He is the reason they're in this game. They're not even close to this game. They're not a playoff team without Patrick Mahomes, I don't think. But he was not at his best. He was at close to about as bad as I think we've seen him.
Okay, Jeff, how much of the blame goes on Patrick Mahomes?
I don't go that strong on him. I felt all year long, and I've made this clear all year long, I don't think the weapons around him were that good. I think because they were wearing a Chiefs uniform, we talked him up, but Hollywood Brown, we had this argument. His impact was zero. He caught 10 passes in 4 games, and he was a non-factor in this game. DeAndre Hopkins vanished, not just in this game, but throughout the postseason and towards the end of the year, and dropped a huge pass that could have helped Mahomes out in a big situation.
Wasn't a great throw.
Yeah. What?
That wasn't a great throw.
Well, I'll say that. We're going to
throw, but you got to make that catch.
You got to make that catch.
You got to make that catch.
Yeah. Travis Kelce is aging. The playoff trap talk was big when he had the big game against Houston. He didn't do anything in the AFC Championship game. He didn't do anything in this game. And Xavier Worthy, as much people want to talk about his big numbers, he didn't do anything when the game mattered. And so you got no run game. You got receivers who aren't winning. Again, I put this a lot on Andy Reid. You can do some things to help your quarterback ease the pressure on him. And they put him out there and just let him get hit over and over and over again with long developing plays. I thought the Eagles' game plan for Jalen Hurts was great. And I thought they made the game real easy for him. I think the Chiefs came out and made it real difficult for Patrick.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I still feel compelled to say, yeah. And before I state any of this, they failed all over the place, right? I'm with you, Jeff, from the standpoint that there's no one person I'm going to put this on and say, okay, this was all because of Patrick Mahomes. right? But he did not play well. I'm with Sam. This was his worst game. We saw him. This reminded me of it. Yeah, and I know you agree. You're just not going quite as strong as Sam, and I'm probably in between you two. I'm further than Jeff, but not quite as far as Sam. This reminded me of the second half of the 21 AFC Championship game against the Bengals. That was the last time I saw the stop, start, go around. I'm going to weave around like a Mike Vick back here. Like, he is effective when he has a definitive direction he's going to run, right? When it's like, I'm getting out of dodge to either extend wide and extend the play and look to throw it, or I'm getting north-south and I'm going for that first down marker. He is not a Fran Tarkington. Nobody is, because defensive linemen are too fast now to do the Fran Tarkington crap where you snake around for 5 minutes. And when he goes into that mode, it's like he's got to know his internal recognition has to say, this is not a positive. This is not how I'm going to succeed. And the ball's got to be thrown away. Look, we're going to get to Andy Reid, and we can put that into this mix as well. Too many times I saw when he did. I thought he felt pressure before it was there.
Yeah.
But part of that's because I think he didn't like the matchup at left tackle, and he that was a problem. He is not comfortable there, and so if you know that your guy's not comfortable at left tackle, then you've got to give him something to dump to early. And too often we saw the Madden view where we could see a little bit of a lot of what Patrick was looking at, and there was no one for him to go to. Backs were turned to him. He was looking at the backs of heads with slower developing routes, and he didn't have a security blanket. That's on Andy Reid. And the more that snowballs, the worse he seemed to play and want to try to force things. So, look, the man's human. We've said this a number of times. Like, there are people that wanted to arrive at Patrick Mahomes being the problem somewhere along the way of a 15-1 season and 2 playoff wins, which I cannot help you with any of that, right? But he was a big part of the problem here. He is a human being, and he can pick up a lot and carry it. He could not carry all of this. He could not carry that they couldn't stay on the field. He could not carry that. I'm with Jeff. Listen, I held high hopes for Hollywood Brown. 6 targets, 2 catches. I mean, he wasn't there in this game. I know we'll get to some more personnel stuff later, but somebody's like, well, hopefully they can keep Hollywood Brown. I'm like, do you think he'd say, no, I know what it was. Somebody said, do you think he'd come back for the same contract? I'm like, would you offer him the same contract? What are we talking about here? I mean, I'm intrigued by the idea of what a healthy Hollywood Brown would look like after 10 games with Patrick Mahomes. I'm doubtful that we could ever see 10 games in a row from him health-wise. So I do think the weaponry was down, and I think we've reached the saturation point of how much Mahomes can carry the load. If Philadelphia hadn't done such a good job in this offseason, the Chiefs may very well have won 3 in a row. I think they would have beaten the Lions. I think they would have beaten anybody else in the NFC. I think this is the one team that they didn't want to see. And if they were going to see him, they needed to have their best night, and they had a bad night all around. And I do think a lot of it did start with Andy Reid. Like, I think Mahomes can be better if Andy Reid is giving him things to make him more comfortable. How much of the issue was Andy Reid's game plan, Sam?
It definitely factors into it. I mean, look, one of the most interesting stats as I was going through this over the last 48 hours since the game was Patrick Mahomes. I talked a lot, remember, on Friday when we said, hey, what can the offensive line do against the Eagles? And I said, Andy Reid is responsible for getting the offensive line, because over the last 4 games, he protected against Andy Reid knew his offensive line was bad, and he protected against that by having a short passing game. And I talked about over the previous 4 weeks, Patrick Mahomes had cut down his average time to throw by half a second, which is a long time in the pocket. In this game, Patrick Mahomes' average time to throw the football was 3.07 seconds. It was his second longest of the entire year. And you know what his longest of the entire year was? The Bills game. The only other game he lost. So the 2 losses that he had the longest time to throw of the season. That is an Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes combination. It is a quarterback that was not getting rid of the ball quickly, and it was a game plan that did not allow him to get rid of the ball quickly. So absolutely. I mean, look, anytime you get your ass kicked and you're down 40-6, this was 40-22. This was Jeff and I were down in the bowels of the stadium with 5 minutes left in the game, waiting on the interviews, because this game was over. It was 40-6 as far as I was concerned. Like, they got their ass kicked in this game, in which case, like, Andy Reid has to take responsibility in that. But that's where he has to take responsibility in it, because the Eagles cut out the Chiefs' short passing game, and there was no adjustment to it. It was like I mentioned this earlier. It was the first team that had the ability to still rush the quarterback and take away the short passing game both. It's the first team we've seen that's been able to do that. It's also the first time that the Chiefs hadn't had this on film a lot. It's the first time we've really seen a team be able to adjust to what the Chiefs had adjusted to late in the season. But there was no readjustment back at halftime. I thought the Chiefs would come out at halftime and score in the first drive. I thought it could be like that AFC Championship game, Mahomes' first year, where they got shut out by Bill Belichick. And then Andy Reid said, if this is what Bill's doing against me, I've got a lot of answers for this in a second. There was nothing in the second half to counter what the Eagles were doing. And that's where he owns some of the blame here too.
Yeah. How much you putting on Andy Reid, Jeff?
A bulk of it, for the same reasons. I mean, there was we knew coming into this, the run game was a problem, and it became a bigger and bigger problem as this game went on because it was a non-factor. And I don't know if they had run the ball more, if they had more success with it, but Kareem Hunt, Isaiah Pacheco, and Samaje Perine had 7 carries and 24 yards. And they were never a part of the first half game plan. Again, Andy Reid is one of the most master tacticians when it comes to screen passes. You didn't see that at all. You didn't see easy throws for the quarterback. It was almost as if, and we'll get to Vic Fangio in a second, but I feel like the Eagles did a great job of understanding how he wants to play. And if you want to really diffuse Patrick Mahomes, you gotta really get into his head. And you got to understand how he thinks and how Andy Reid thinks. And that's what I saw the Eagles do really well. People think it's just as simple as their defensive front kicked the Chiefs' offensive line. The way they were rushing, the discipline and how they rushed, the way they merged that with the coverage on the back end. When he's double clutching and happy feet, all that he's not seeing what he thinks he's seeing.
100%.
And so they were, and I told people this 3 years ago, at some point he's going to pay a price for running right and throwing the football back across the field. And Cooper DeJean was that guy in this game. He was waiting for it, and he put it right in his lap, and he returned it for a pick six. And so, to me, they did things that they saw on film that they knew. At some point, when you play a quarterback who is that creative and that innovative and that improvisational, they get into their own habits. And the Eagles picked up on all his habits. Even when he scrambled, you could see they were forcing him backwards. He wasn't moving up. He was moving backwards to get back forward. And that just gave them more time to get to him as well.
Yeah, I think I think the question that the Chiefs got to answer is, did Andy Reid have a bad day, or has he gotten stale? And I think the most likely answer, I know while emotions are raw, fans are going to be like, he's got to change everything, this and that. The most likely answer is he had a bad day, right? It happens. It's a veteran. It's a good coaching staff. They've been in the playoffs 4 straight years. Vic Fangio's been around. He knows what he's doing. Nick Sirianni's no boob, right? I think the most likely answer is that the Kansas City Chiefs had a bad day, that the Eagles had them figured out. But I think people should hear that. And I think the Chiefs need to be honest with themselves and hear what you just said, Jeff. They need to look in the mirror and see that not only did they have better talent, that's somewhat on Brett Beach, to have a good draft. Now, I think the Eagles are riding the wave of a great offseason, in addition to other good moves, right? The same way the Chiefs rode the wave of a great draft 3 years ago, right? And that really, along with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and their coaching staff, carried them, all those good young players at a cheap cost are a big part of it. And the Eagles, they nailed that this past offseason. That's part of it. And so Brett Veach and his staff got to roll up their sleeves. They got to figure it out. I think they got to get more draft picks to have more opportunities to get more talented young players. But I think Andy Reid needs to look at it that they saw what was coming, right? They had superior athletes, but they really saw what was coming. They knew how to get after Mahomes. They knew where he was going to go with the ball. They knew who to take away, right? And I think that should be a wake-up call. And I think Mahomes said as much, Sam, right? After when he said that was his quote. This has got to be a wake-up call for us. And I think it's definitely got to be a wake-up call, to really dig in deep and find out, did we just have a bad day, or are we structurally now predictable to the better coaches out there?
Yeah, I think it is the latter. This gets into, the next item on our list, which is about Vic Fangio, but he clearly thought that the Chiefs were a predictable team. And the most interesting thing I thought Patrick Mahomes said after the game, and I mentioned this aspect on your show too, Soren, which is I praise Josh Allen for this. For the day after his loss, he said in front of the media 18 questions and he was engaged. Patrick Mahomes was the same way. I mean, it was 12 minutes and he was not this depressed guy. I'm not answering that. Like, he was engaged in his answer. And the most interesting thing he said was somebody asked him about the season, kind of thinking he would say, hey, we went 15-1. We made it to the Super Bowl. We're the first team ever to make it to the Super Bowl after winning back-to-back. I mean, this is possibly the best 3-year run in NFL history. And instead, Patrick Mahomes said, I didn't play up to my standard. He said, until I prove, he said, the Eagles tried to make me a fundamental pocket quarterback. And until I prove I can do that, and I'm willing to do that, that's what I'm going to see. And when you look at Vic Fangio's game plan, he installed a game plan pregame and just sat back and watched it. This was not a Steve Spagnuolo deal where it was, okay, now it's third down. Let me look at the play sheet. How can I fool the quarterback here like he did Josh Allen at the end of the game? He said, I don't need to fool the quarterback. I don't think he can beat this defense that we're playing. They did not blitz a single time. According to Next Gen Stats, Patrick Mahomes thought they blitzed once. They didn't. According to the stats, they did not blitz a single time. Yeah.
Which is revealing, right?
They ran.
So only the fourth time in 9 years of Next Gen Stats that's ever happened in regular or postseason.
They played zone on 40 out of 42 snaps. The same zone versus they played zone. They played covers 4 on 60% of the snaps. Also, like the most in the Next Gen Stats era. They just came out and said same pitch over and over and over again. You can't hit this, and so that's why I wrote about this after the game in the sense that I think a lot of people are going to say this game's going to motivate Patrick Mahomes, and I don't disagree, but I don't think that all Patrick Mahomes can take out of this game is, Rocky Balboa placing Ivan Drago's picture on the mirror in Russia and being like motivated to fight this guy. Like, he's got to take a real look at the specifics for why this happened. This was not a lack of motivation thing. This was not a lack of preparation, even for the Chiefs. This was them saying, defensive coordinator for the first time saying, I think I've got an answer for Patrick Mahomes. And this offseason needs to be about finding out what his response can be.
Yeah. And let's not forget, I just could draw Soren that.
No, go for it.
Remember, Sean Payton made a comment at the end of the season talking about if they saw the Chiefs again, they felt really good about their chances. I think this is what he was referring to. Like, they felt like they've got, and this is something that every Chiefs fan should understand about the AFC West moving forward, that Chiefs and the Chargers and the Broncos have the makings. They're not there yet, but they have the makings of the kind of team the Chiefs just saw in the Eagles. Strong pass rush, strong offensive line, good back end. Like, they're building for that kind of deal. And so, Sam's right. Like, this wasn't just, and by the way, they didn't just line up and cover 4. They disguised it really well. That's the thing. They fooled him a lot. And that's the thing that's really kind of surprising about the whole thing.
I think a lot of it, Vic Fangio said he can't beat this, and I'm not going to. I think there are times that you can get too cute. And I think I think he kept it simple, stupid, right? Yeah. Like, I think he went, until he beats it, I don't need to do anything else. That's what other people do. Like, oh, I gotta throw something different at him because he's gonna figure this out, and they start getting a little cute, and then he does burn them. I mean, it was just the same 4 guys every time up front. I'm sure they did some things different on the back end, but for the most, but what it was every time was 7 guys. 7 guys.
Yeah. And also it was like defensive line rushed the same way. I mean, it was the 4 guys rushed and didn't get out of the rushing lanes. Like, they didn't run a ton of stunts because they feared, well, he can scramble. If you do this, if you change up, it was just don't get out of your rushing lanes. I did want to, somebody asked, because the quote I mentioned about Patrick Mahomes analyzing his season, like, hey, you have to press the question right there and ask the follow-up. I did. First of all, it's hard to get in questions in some of these settings, but I did.
It is very hard. It is an absolute melee.
But I did get in the next question. I said, can you expand on that? And he said, I just think when defenses are going to play the shell coverages and stay back and play man on third down, I can't make bad plays worse. And I think that's something you saw today. There were guys that weren't open, and I need to throw the ball away or check it down and let other guys make plays happen. That's something I've dealt with my entire career. If I don't show I'll take what's there, then defenses are going to stay in the coverages that they're in. That was this game with the Eagles. I think he's underestimating his ability to check down. I think he has checked down a lot more. But Jeff's example of throwing across his body, it's a third down play where he got desperate. His first third down of the game.
16.
His first third down of the game. very well could have been intercepted when he tries to hit Hollywood Brown on the sideline. Like that play could have been intercepted. And like that's what he's referring to is like the Eagles never did get out of this coverage. I know Jeff said that they disguised stuff on the back end, but when I think of fooling the quarterback, it's not just coverage, it's also blitzes, who's coming, who's not. This was not nearly as complex as a lot of defensive coordinators have thrown at Patrick Mahomes, and he's beaten. This was just simply, you can't beat this during this game. And to your point, Soren, why am I going to get out of it until you prove that you can?
Exactly.
And look, I know we got to get the break, but I was going to say, we're going to hit Fangio after this, or should I just say it now?
All right, do it now.
I was just going to say that, when I brought him up 2 weeks ago, people were like, I've never beat him with the Broncos. Didn't have it's overrated. I'm like,
not us though. All three of us on this podcast liked Fangio.
Yeah. And what I try to let people know, it's not just Fangio, it's that style of defense. And the guys who run that style of defense, it's not just a 4-man front. It's there's a reason why. I'm not trying to minimize their previous championships, but Robert Saleh was the defensive coordinator for the 49ers in the first one. Jonathan Gannon was the defensive coordinator in the second one, and Steve Wilkes was the defensive coordinator in the third one. Like, those guys aren't as accomplished in this league as Vic Fangio or even Todd Bowles for that matter. And so when you're seeing guys on the same level as you who've done as much as you've done in this league or close to what you've done, they're not Fangio and Andy Reid are two different levels of coaching, obviously, but Vic Fangio's got some game as a coach, and you saw that. And I remember, Mike Sando does his quarterback ratings, and there was a coach a few years ago who talked about quarterback tiers. He talked about Mahomes being a guy who'll play street ball if you hold him down. I guarantee you that was Vic Fangio making that comment, because what we saw from him in this game was street ball.
Yeah, and that's where he went to. Now, a lot of times, I think the quote unquote street ball is the guy scrambles around and makes a play, right? Off schedule, out of the design. And this one, they had so many guys back in coverage, there was nowhere to go with the football. And so when he started running around, it was just a matter of time before he was ultimately brought down.
And every running around was running outside. And that's what I mean by staying in the rushing lanes. Like, that's what the Chiefs didn't do against Josh Allen the first time they played him, but they did it much better the second time. Is if he was going to scramble, he was going to cut off half the field or even 2/3 of the field by running one direction. The Eagles did not allow Mahomes to scramble between the tackles. Every time he scrambled, it was a rollout one way or the other.
We can talk about the Chiefs' game plan a little bit more here in a second. First of all, I'll tell you, always a good game plan if you're headed to Whataburger. First of all, I love the chicken fajita taco. I know it's called Whataburger, but it is a hell of a taco. I'd encourage you to try that. We're always brought to you by our friends at Whataburger. Whataburger is proud to sponsor the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. Now at all your KC Whataburger locations, and for a limited time only, get your Whata-Wings tossed in any of your favorite flavors, including the new Nashville Hot. Or get your hands on fire you can handle with the all-new, perfectly spicy Bacon Blaze Jalapeno Double. Get a kick this football season with these great new limited-time Whataburger favorites. Stop by any of the Kansas City Whataburger locations today. Whataburger's open 24 hours a day. Unlock a premium dispensary experience at Key Cannabis. Visit one of their 14 key locations across Missouri for a huge selection of cannabis products and expert recommendations from Missouri's friendliest bud tenders. At Key Cannabis, you'll find award-winning cannabis, convenient online ordering with drive-through pickup and a loyalty program, plus so much more. Visit their Kansas City area locations in KC North, South Kansas City, and Belton. Open 7 days a week. And mention my name, Soren Petro, to your bud tender for 20% off your purchase. Key Cannabis, open for premium cannabis experiences. Let's talk a little bit about the game plan, guys. Would a different plan, Jeff, a different game plan, had different results?
I don't see it. Not on that day.
You're at max volume all of a sudden.
I know. All of a sudden, you went like super loud. I don't know if you.
This must be a terrific point because he wants to make sure this part's heard.
Yeah. Right. Wow. I'm talking the same level. But
I'll bring it
lower
down
now. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that. No, I don't think. I was in the press. Like I say, I'm talking about the press conferences afterward, and somebody had mentioned, well, if Rashee Rice had been around, Rashee Rice wasn't going to change what happened in this game. They could have ran the ball more. They could have done more things on offense. But ultimately, like from the snap, the Eagles were dominating this game. There's not one point where I felt like, oh, the Chiefs have an opportunity here, or there's an opening. It just felt as if the Eagles were on a whole different level. And I said this as well last week that, it's always this team has proven to be much tougher when they're playing with a chip on their shoulder, when they're doubted like last season, or when, like the year before, you can't win without Tyreek, or even in 19 when the Ravens were the top seed and all the rave. Like when they're the team that's trying to run it back, or like this year, the team trying to three-peat, there's just a different vibe to them. And it just felt like the Eagles were hungrier. It felt like they said afterwards that what happened 2 years ago was a big motivating factor for them. And they played like a team that was out to make a point. Like all the stuff, even like Kelsey was trying to get into it with CJ Gardner-Johnson and Jordan Davis and some of those guys. Like they were just laser focused. And so was their coach. I know Sirianni, he's a different kind of guy, but you got to give the guy credit for what he's done. Like I think he's perfect for that team. And has proven that because the success they've had with him, even with that meltdown they had last year, he had them playing at a level that they didn't play at all season long, even when they were playing great football.
Was there a game plan, Sam, that could have made this game different?
I don't think so. I don't think the Chiefs should spend a ton of time, to be honest, like analyzing their game plan in the aftermath, as opposed to analyzing the stuff that I've already mentioned, which is that Patrick Mahomes viewed this as a culmination of what they had put on tape all year long. And Vic Fangio believes he exposed something that was put on tape all year long. Like that's where the Chiefs need to spend their energy this offseason, not analyzing why this particular game plan didn't work. Because I think Jeff mentioned earlier about clamoring for the run more often. The run sucked too in this game. They did try and run one screen. The Eagles blew it up in the backfield, so Mahomes couldn't even get the pass off on the screen. Like I don't know what exactly would have worked in this game, other than something that they don't even have in their playbook. For example, something we hadn't seen all year. For example, like they ran into a really good team here. There's a lot of credit that goes to the roster that the Eagles built, the fact that it did not have weaknesses on defense, and I will push back some on the motivational aspect of it. Like if you are an NFL athlete and you're not already up for a Super Bowl, like you're in the wrong sport. Like go play something else. I thought the Chiefs had by far the tougher assignment as far as motivational reasons to get back here. Well, and I know that three-peat's dangling over somebody, but they had to all year. Like how can you get up to play a freaking Raiders team when you're trying for a three-peat and you've won the last 2 years already? Like they had a tough focus all year long, and they still went 15-1. And I think the Eagles might have found some motivation during the year. That's why I believe in the motivational stuff during the year to a certain extent. Like you've got to find a way to get up for the Raiders game, but this is the Super Bowl. Like you've got to be up for this game regardless.
Well, I'm going to make it clear. I'm not saying they weren't up for it. I'm saying that all year long they found a way to win, and they played like a team that thought they could find a way to win at some point, and it just kept getting farther and farther away from them.
That could be true.
I think that's fair. And I do think I'm with you, Sam, on the if you can't get up for the Super Bowl, you're in the wrong sport. But I do think there is an element of like, Hollywood Brown was available, DeAndre Hopkins was available, DJ Humphries was available. Like if teams love you, you're not available. You know what I mean? Like, so there is an element of I am all for getting some hungry new blood in, but you got to make sure it's the right blood. And I'm not saying these guys were the wrong ones. I also think it's entirely possible that this was the 61st game in 3 years for many guys on this team. That is a lot of football, okay? And that they were just worn the blank out. That really, if we had true serum and we could really know, it's amazing that they didn't drop one of the first 2 playoff games. That if you look back at it and go, their tank was on E, and just because of fatigue, beat up, mental wear and tear. Trent Green talked about that to me on Monday on my radio show about, he's like, you're just mentally fried. He said, just what they go through, all these big games, here's the new game plan, jam it in here. We got to figure it out. Run all these plays on Wednesday. Okay, now perfect it. What do we like? Scale it down. Do this. He said, just a whole process. And then the whole media circus, and everything that's there while you've already put the game. He said, I know they're as equipped as anybody to handle all that. They've been through it. They have the experience. He said, but it's draining. Like it is mentally fatigue, mentally taxing. And it could be as simple as the Eagles getting knocked out early last year gave them a chance to charge their batteries for 5 more weeks than the Chiefs got this year. And that, that wasn't the only reason. I know that's what fans want. They want to hear one thing. Well, if we do this differently, then we win. There's nothing that we will talk about. The game plan by itself wasn't it. Patrick Mahomes by itself wasn't it. It was all of these things. But I think you do go through and study where do we potentially make mistakes. And I think this is one that I don't know that they made a mistake. It's like, this is why no one's won 3 in a row. It's a bitch.
It is. But look, that's not going away. Just because the Chiefs lost this game, like that is attached to them. I mean, we're still going to talk about, more on Friday about this dynasty. Like every other team still views the Chiefs as in the middle of their dynasty, whether they won or lost this game. And they're going to have to wear that label for the eternity of Patrick Mahomes' career. So that's something they're going to have to deal with. But I don't disagree with your point, Soren. I'm just saying that part of it is sticking around.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point. All right, the offensive line. How big of a problem was the offensive line, Jeff? I mean, we've talked about it. They did the best they could. But at the end of the day, they didn't just get beat because Joe Thuney got shoved into the quarterback, which did happen. They didn't just get beat because Caliendo was completely outclassed, which did happen. They got beat in other spots where they weren't supposed to get beat as well.
Oh, yeah. I have not seen professional offensive linemen get tossed around like that, maybe ever. And Reggie White back in it. What's that?
You watched the Tampa Chiefs Super Bowl, right?
Well, they were getting tossed around. They were just getting run by. Like that,
they were getting everything.
Yeah, these guys were getting tossed. I mean, Trey Smith was getting tossed around. Jawan Taylor was getting tossed around. They were all getting a little bit of that action. And again, Eagles had a great pass rush plan. You can see their edge rushers setting wider, almost coming in with like a bus, Joe Thuney and Jawan Taylor, and it just Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter are a beast inside. But really, yeah, I mean, the same problems we talked about all year were there on full display on Sunday. And Sam mentioned it. Trey Smith had not been playing that great. Jawan Taylor had moments, but he also had moments where he wasn't playing great. Caliendo was a mess. You're out there with 4 guys who legitimately could have been taken advantage of. And all 5 of them, got that action in this game. And it's just, look, I give them credit for masking this as long as they mask.
Yes.
And I think that's one thing that probably made Andy and even Mahomes believe, okay, we can go out there with a game plan to be more aggressive throwing the football because we got through Myles Garrett. We got through Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. We got through the Houston guys. We got through the Steelers, TJ Watt. I mean, all these guys we were able to handle. But again, the longer you play this game, the more film you put out there, the more people see what you're doing. And I think the Eagles, again, knew what was coming and how to take full advantage of their weaknesses.
I love the way Jeff said it, Sam. I mean, they did a great job of masking it, but the Eagles exposed it.
Yeah, I mean, this was a Band-Aid solution. And look, I mean, I talked a lot about Friday that I didn't think that their offensive line had suddenly figured it out. It was just that the scheme had covered for a bad offensive line. And, the little adhesive on the Band-Aid wore off in this game because the Eagles had a great game plan. But if the Eagles' primary assignment on their defensive line, and it was to prevent Patrick Mahomes from scrambling, to take away from his running lanes, you can't continue to get beat and give up pressure when that happens. When they're not blitzing, their second objective is to bring pressure. Their first objective is to prevent him from scrambling. Like, you just can't get beat in that situation. And so that's why if I thought Patrick Mahomes was worse than the offensive line. If you think the offensive line was worse than the quarterback, I'm not going to sit here and say that you're crazy for thinking that. They're both all of those, parts in this equation were really bad. But I pointed this out before that more time to throw is not great for Patrick Mahomes. And he decided that he needed more time to throw here as well. And so I know it's Patrick Mahomes, it's offensive line, because that's what's on the cameras on the entire game. But obviously the Eagles were doing a lot right in coverage that made the offensive line look worse, that made the quarterback look worse. And we all talked a lot over the last half of the year that that's what was going to hurt the Chiefs, is once a team made the Chiefs take more time to throw, that this offensive line couldn't hold up and allow them more time to throw.
Yeah, it was an issue. We will get into the wide receivers. First, we'll let you know if you need help with your insurance, David Starnes Allstate Insurance has you covered. David Starnes Allstate Insurance. Elevate your coverage, elevate your confidence, and drive worry-free. Covering all the important things in your world, home, business, life, and even the fun stuff, as well as your motorcycle, boat, ATV, and you name it. Get with Dave, and he'll get you covered. You can give Dave and his crew a call at 816-781-7331. Visit them online or stop into any of their locations, North Kansas City, Liberty, and Branson, Missouri. Don't put those insurance needs off any longer. Get with Dave today. He'll give you peace of mind for the things in your life most important to you. David Starnes, Allstate Insurance. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Locally owned and making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Let Gann educate you about the most cost-effective way to solve your parking lot problems. With free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty, Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Find Gann online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. All right, Sam, wide receivers. Hollywood Browns lumped into this. You heard Jeff talk about the fact that we didn't see a lot of Xavier Worthy till very late in the game. How much of the blame goes at the fact that the wide receivers aren't good enough?
Yeah, I mean, I guess some. Like I said earlier, whenever you get whipped, I don't think that anyone can sit there and hold up their hand and say this one isn't on me. But I do think the one bright spot of this game was Xavier Worthy, and he's a guy that's going to be here at least 3 more years, if not 4. And like he cooked in the game, and he cooked all the playoffs. I mean, I talked a lot about the fact that he had changed into this short game receiver, but he only caught 3 deep passes all year. He caught 4 in the playoffs after 3 in the whole regular season. Like Xavier Worthy found something late in the season, and like that's a great development for the Chiefs in their future, because halfway through the year, I think we all would have pegged wide receiver as their top need. And now I think if Xavier Worthy's got something, I'm not saying like they need some help at wide receiver, certainly. But you feel better about wide receiver than you did, let's say, week 11 or so going into the season. Part of that is because what Xavier Worthy's, the way he showed up in the 3 games in the playoffs.
Yeah, we saw a different side. We saw the deep ball, and we saw him catch the ball in traffic as well, Jeff. I know it didn't come early enough, but it was still productive. How much of the blame goes to wideouts in your book?
I'm not giving him flowers for catching deep balls against backups. If he was doing some of that in the second quarter, I'd be like, hey, it's eye-opening stuff. But he was open. There was a play where he was just wide open. That's what I was talking about with Patrick Mahomes hesitant to pull the trigger. He just wouldn't pull the trigger to him. Well, those don't count. At the end of the day, it's like
but they don't get blamed for it either, right?
Well, I'm just saying, like he didn't. Those numbers came at the end of the game when it didn't matter, and he made strides. I like the guy a lot, but I didn't see anything from any receiver on that field for the Chiefs that impressed me in that game. You
weren't impressed. I mean, I know it came late, but they were still covering him. I mean, they didn't just go, okay, go ahead and run out there. He still was bracketed. He was double covered on one. He came down with the ball. Like, you weren't at least impressed with
eight targets, 8 catches for 157 yards and 2 touchdowns. I'm just not impressed at all.
Against an Eagles defense we've been slobbering over all night.
What was he doing when it was 34-0? Go back and check his numbers.
I mean, I'm with Sam. I think he was open. There were a couple of times they wanted to get the ball to him. Listen, I know a quarterback can't catch it, can't throw it and catch it, but the receiver can't throw it to himself either. I mean, when it was thrown to him, you weren't impressed with what he did the 8 times they threw it to him?
No, because I wasn't watching the game at that point. The game was over. I wasn't impressed. I was eating popcorn and nachos and trying to figure out how to get down to the press conferences. It's like, look, if he did that in a preseason game, we wouldn't be sitting here saying, oh, my God, this guy's like taking off. It's like we'd say it's preseason. Like, that's how I looked at it. Again, I'm not taking anything away from the development he made. I'm just saying I'm not going to put too much stock on what he did in a game when it's 34-0. He had plenty of chances. I remember vividly a play early in that game where Worthy went into motion. Mahomes threw him a quick flare pass, and Cooper DeJean shut it down in 2 yards. And I was like, okay, that play's out. And he made a lot of hay with that play during the season. And look, there was another play when Mahomes wanted to go deep. You can go back. I was watching the replay of it, And the first drive or second drive, he wanted to throw the ball deep, and he double clutched.
He should have thrown it. He should have thrown that ball.
Well, Quinyon Mitchell had him locked up. That's why he didn't throw it.
He should have thrown that ball.
Yeah. I mean, he didn't trust Worthy to make the play. Right?
He didn't. He didn't. I agree with you. He should have thrown that ball. And let me point out, though, sorry to cut in, Soren, but I agree with Jeff that that's much less important, what he did at the end of the game. Like, I would think considerably more of it if he had done it in the, when the game was still in doubt, which was for 7 minutes of the first quarter. But like, I still think something of it when he does it at some point during the game.
Yeah. I listen, I think what we did see is that they got something in Xavier Worthy. Whenever he gets back from suspension and is healthy, we know they have something in Rashee Rice. And that's it. I will say that that's it. Like, Travis Kelce needs to be the third or fourth option at best. I think there's a pretty good chance, and we'll get into this more later on, that we've seen the last of Travis Kelce, but they do at least have two guys. They've got a lot of work to do because, like, you can't just have one guy. And, the third, we've heard Eric Eager tell us about it. The third receiver, that's a chance to really, if you've got a quality third receiver, to win some matchup problems. And they don't have that answer. That's for sure. Yeah. Okay. But Xavier Worthy can ball. I mean, that part I feel pretty good about. Let me just tell you, while you were stuffing your fat face, Jeff, I just always wanted to do that, call Jeff fat, me do that. He's, clearly not fat. But he was good. I mean, I'm sorry.
Let me ask you this. Forget about what Devontae Smith did or what A.J. Brown did. Like, Jalen Naylor lined up against Jalen Watson, your guy Jalen Watson, early in that game, beat him off the line of scrimmage, and probably should score a touchdown if he goes another yard with it. Like, that's the kind of stuff.
Jahan Dotson beat him,
Yeah, because Naylor didn't have a catch, right?
Yeah, I think you're talking about Jahan Dotson.
Jahan Dotson, yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but that's the kind of stuff I want to see Xavier Worthy do. Line up, line of scrimmage, and beat somebody.
Right. Okay.
What matters?
First, the guy that you're all over, though, had 42 yards in the game. I mean, Keon Coleman, the guy who you loved, had 2 catches in two playoff games. Like, guys have good games, guys have bad games. I just think in this particular game, like, Worthy was not the problem in this game. To Soren's point, the rest of the receiver, the guy that I loved, loved is strong. The guy that I was touting late in the season, changing their offense, Hollywood Brown, like crap on him. He was non-existent. He was non-existent in this game.
That's what I would say is A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith got theirs, but I think where the Eagles really killed them, like, you expect A.J. Brown to catch a back shoulder throw even when he's covered because he's badass. That's why he gets paid. You expect Devonta Smith to go ahead and make the catch when there's an arm in there. I mean, Watson didn't have great coverage, but he recovered to get his arm in there. A lot of guys wouldn't have caught that. To me, the bitch of it was what was Jahan Dotson. It was the lesser guys that were still getting catches. I mean, that to me is what's really missing. I think they've got their, they've got 80%, 90%, 95%, 100%, whatever you want to label it. They've got their A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith.
They got their dudes. Yeah.
Right. But what they don't have are the other guys. They don't have anybody else that they can be like, okay, decoy, but this guy, Jahan Dotson, can still beat you. They don't have a guy like that. Like, Justin Watson doesn't make that play. They got to get better depth. And listen, if you could find another guy and have a third guy, because I think Travis Kelce is going to cycle out very soon. He's not going to be a guy that you can count on. You need a third guy, right? If not next year, then very soon, because Travis Kelce is not going to be one of those three. And so whether that's T. Higgins or drafting another guy, they need to find another wideout. Like, I don't think the wide receivers are good enough. I think that's clear. But I think I think as a group, as a room, as everybody likes to say. But I know this. Xavier Worthy is good enough.
Yeah. Let me make this point too.
Okay.
Go back and watch the Eagles versus the Rams in the divisional round, and their receivers were going crazy against the same defense. Like, Puka Nacua was going nuts. Cooper Kupp was going
Agreed.
nuts.
Agreed.
And so
that's
to me.
Worthy.
Yeah.
So, I'm good with it.
And they almost beat that. They almost beat the Eagles. The Eagles almost didn't get here because of that game.
And if that had happened, the Chiefs would be celebrating a three-peat, I believe.
Well,
I really believe the Eagles were just their kryptonite. I mean, they almost beat them 2 years ago and had a lot of opportunities. I think that's the thing people should understand is, the Chiefs, what is amazing is all their close Super Bowls, they find a way to win it, right? But they're not infinitely better than all these teams when they win by 3 points. They've been, around the same ability of their opponent and found ways to win. This time they ran into a badass.
Yeah. They trailed by 10 points in all those games. I will point out that Nakua had less catches, yards, and touchdowns than Xavier Worthy did against the defense. So I don't think Xavier Worthy was the problem.
That's right. Just get the garbage time plays.
Let's wrap with this on the defense. We'll wrap with a positive note. At least I think it's a positive. I don't have any problem whatsoever with the defense and how they played in this game. Now, I do think they've got some potential problems coming down the road with some of the players they're going to lose. We'll get into that more in later podcasts. But defensively, this could have been a 10-0 game at the half if Patrick Mahomes isn't throwing picks. And if you're 10-0 at the half, you're still in the game. We saw him down 17-0 to the New England Patriots in an AFC Championship game and send that to overtime. Right. So I think they could have still been in this fight if the offense had played better. All my frustration lies on the offensive side of the ball. I'm not saying that it's not possible to shut somebody out. It is, but they totally took Saquon Barkley out of this game. And I think if you're 10-0 at the half, I'd be interested to see, can Vic Fangio just stay in that same defense? Can the Chiefs, do they hit one of those big plays and make it 10-7? And does that rattle the Eagles? I think it could have been a different game. I don't put any blame on this defense. Jeff, you?
I do. Okay. I think they were okay. I didn't think that they were great. I thought, look, AJ Brown doesn't get offensive pass interference on that first deep ball. They're probably scoring on that one.
He grabbed a face. I mean,
I'm just saying it was a weak. I thought it was a weak call. I thought the McDuffie play was a weak call. I thought they were both bad calls. And then all of a sudden,
I think there were a number of plays. I think the McDuffie play could have gone either ways, but you can't pitch if it goes against you. I thought the Nick Bolton hit on Saquon Barkley I've seen not called, but you can't pitch when it's called. Jordan rules apply to the running back too, but like you grab a guy's face mask, that gets called.
Is that what they called? They call pass interference. They didn't call like a personal foul for hitting the face mask, right?
Well, he shoved off by grabbing his face mask and pushing him off.
I thought it was a weak call. But anyway, that play, Hurts missed A.J. Brown on a deep ball. He tried to back shoulder him. That could have led to a big play. And to be honest with you, the idea that they would have been 10-0 at halftime without the pick six or the Zach Ball interception, to me, is ridiculous. They had the ball deep in Chiefs territory. If they had punted, at the very least, they probably would have gotten 2 field goals out of it. Yeah, it took Saquon Barkley out of it, but Jalen Hurts lit them up.
You can't go through all these ifs and ifs and ifs when you just said on the Xavier Worthy that none of those counted. None of those plays you mentioned with him mentioning AJ Brown, that didn't count. None of those counted either.
What I'm saying is they got points anyway off the defensive turnover. So to say that they wouldn't have scored,
well, one of them they scored the points on the turnover. So that one, if he doesn't throw the pick, that's 7 points that come away. I'm fine if you want to say, hey, it could have been they could have still gone down. It could have been 20-0. Fine. It could have been 16-0. Fine. But it could have been 10-0.
It could have been. But end of the day,
I would probably give you 13 or 17-0 is the most likely score if he doesn't throw interceptions. Okay.
And so, how many yards did the Chiefs have at halftime?
Oh, they had 23, I think.
How many first downs did they have?
They had 2 or 3.
Yeah, and so
one in the first half.
Oh, we're talking about the Chiefs' defense. Why are we quoting?
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
That's part of why the defensive effort was so good, is they were getting nothing from the offense and having to turn right back around and go back out on the field.
Yeah, the point I'm making is once you got to 10-0 or even 16, 17-0, the game was over. And so the idea that the Chiefs somehow were going to stop them from getting to that point, I just don't. It doesn't hold much weight. I felt like they threw the ball on McDuffie all night long. They obviously roasted Jalen Watson twice, and they couldn't contain Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts was masterful in this game, except for one interception. He ran for 70 yards. He was 17 for 21 passing. Yeah, Saquon Barkley got stopped, and he had a great year, and it was a great game plan for that. But they bet on Jalen Hurts, like screwing it up, and Jalen Hurts destroyed them. So I can't give them credit for that. Well, and by the way, that's what an elite defense looks like. What the Philadelphia Eagles were doing. That's what elite looks like.
He had all day to throw in this game. Like the Chiefs' defense, their weakness in this was like I mentioned earlier, the Eagles were the first team to expose all of the Chiefs' flaws. And their defensive flaw is Chris Jones can rush the passer. He got injured in the first quarter. They have nobody who could pressure the quarterback at that point. Like nobody on their team could pressure the quarterback. The Eagles' offensive line dominated this game. I didn't think the rest of the defense was that bad at all. I mean, look, the reason the Eagles are a Super Bowl team is if you take away one thing, they're going to beat you somewhere else. The Chiefs are only the second team all season to take Saquon Barkley out of the game. The Browns took him out of the game. The Chiefs took him out of the game. They're only the second team to do it. None of us thought the Eagles could win this game because we were asked the very question on Friday. If Saquon Barkley had 22 carries for 57 yards, could the Eagles win this game? And all of us said that they could not win the game that way. So, I mean, look, even in the first half, when this game, when the Eagles were building their lead, when they got up 24-0, they were averaging 4.5 yards per play. Only once all year have they been worse than that. Like, the defense was not the issue. And other than the pressure, they let Jalen Hurts have all day. Like, if we're talking about environment of quarterback when we're judging the environment has to matter here. Yeah. Like, Hurts played a much different environment than Patrick Mahomes played in because of the protection that he had in the game.
And that affects the defense, right? That means your defense, look, we made the point last.
Well, yeah, that's part of the defense. For sure. That's part of my defensive grade for sure.
Hurts is horrible against the Brits. They blitzed him in this game. And he lit them up. With the blitz.
Against pressure,
Yeah, two things about Jalen Hurts. One, he's now been to 2 Super Bowls and played very well in both of them. He's really good. All right, there's no more, I'm not sure what he is. Did he just have a good day? He's had premium performances in 2 playoffs in 3 years, and he's still young. He's really good. Now, I do want to see what he looks like when they have to feel the full weight of the contract he extended, because they're not feeling that yet. And that's one of the things we're seeing with Mahomes. Part of the reason why we talk about all these wideouts suck is because Mahomes is expensive. And by the way, he's going to make a big jump and get even more expensive. And so it's going to continue to be hard. But we will see. But Jalen Hurts has won the first Super Bowl for Patrick Mahomes. Like the win it when you're cheap. That's part of what all the guys do. Tom Brady did it. All the big boys usually get one in their early years when they're cheap. They have a maximum amount of talent, and then they have to grow, and then they have to carry more of the weight, like all the weight that was put on Patrick Mahomes. So I want to be clear: Jalen Hurts was badass in this. I wonder what will happen when his legs aren't there, right? Like I never like seeing a guy squat 900 pounds because I think you're going to screw up your back and do things. And some of the weightlifting stuff they show is all great, but I'm going to tell you it's going to make him age even quicker. And it's going to make the injuries pile up. And so we'll see what happens when his legs go. But he is playing great football right now. And I don't think it was a dumb game plan to say, we're not letting Saquon Barkley beat us. You go prove it. Jalen Hurts threw 18 touchdowns this year. 18, right? What a freaking game. He didn't go out and school people. They were not winning all year. Like, it was a sound game plan to say, you go beat us. He just said, bitch, I will. And he did. And that's why I think it's pretty easy to walk away from this game going, they're really good. They had a great day. I don't know what else, I think there are some minor things they could have tried to do differently, but I don't think they were winning this day. I think, the defense, but again, if you hold the Eagles to 26, right? If you just take the 2 touchdowns off the board from that, which I grant you, they may have scored more points, but if you hold them to 26, don't you think coming into this game, we're in this fight?
The Chiefs?
Yes.
Yeah, coming into it, but that wasn't the game we saw. That's the
No,
whole.
it wasn't. But that's what I'm saying. From the subject, the question is about how much blame does the defense get?
What percentage of blame would you guys put on the defense? I say 5%.
I'm right there.
I'd say 20%. I'm not blaming them for the game. I'm just not saying that they were great, phenomenal.
What 20% on the defense? Do you know there's only 100% total?
Yeah.
Because between Reed and Mahomes, I was hearing 80%.
And offensive line, and you hated the wide receivers in the game.
Hey, look, they played the Baltimore Ravens last year, a team that was probably as stocked as this team is, the Eagles were this year, and held them to 10 points. That's what they had to do in this game. I kept making the point all year. This defense ain't the same as that defense. And if you're saying 26 points is a good outing for this defense and they're elite, I can't buy that. They were okay. But they weren't great.
The Chiefs turned it over 3 times, though, and all in their own territory. They didn't turn it over in that Ravens playoff game last year.
Yeah. They turned it over against the Niners, right?
You would you would admit this. The Chiefs offense made it much harder on the Chiefs defense.
Yeah, the offense was the problem. I'm not saying that. I'm just not sitting here. And I think because the offense was so bad that it's making the defense look better than what it was.
Can we get you to bump it down to 19?
I guess you guys missed all those deep passes he was throwing and the way he was working McDuffie and Jalen Watson. I mean, the secondary sucked. The secondary was awful.
Fine. Can we get you to go 19.5?
Yeah. So if the secondary sucked and the pass rush was bad, like who was good? Who was great?
I think collectively, who was great? Everybody who stopped Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, I mean, that was a great accomplishment.
It is a great accomplishment, and it was everybody's game plan for. I mean, you're in the get it right business, and Steve Spagnuolo's not going to get a ring just all by himself for having a swell effort, right? Like he won't get a ring. No one needs to worry about it. But I think, as I look at it, listen, there are some things that are out of their hands, like drafting last is part of the equation. Salary cap is part of the equation. And then, like when you give the quarterback that much money, he can't have a bad day. Like he can't carry that much of the cap and have a bad day. So I'm dumping way more on him. I think Andy Reid's game plan sucked. I think it was one of his worst efforts. I'm dumping a lot on him. I think the offensive line, they've been trying, and I don't have. That's why I like the phrase, if not him, then who. I'm not sure who would have been better. Who was available that could have solved the left tackle riddle. But they've been trying to fix that for 5 years. They haven't got that done. I mean, all those things are in line long before I get to the defense.
Yeah, they got to find their Jordan Mailata. Got to go to a rugby tournament somewhere.
Dude, how much does it help? Well, now they're paying him, right? And we'll see when the weight of that contract comes in, right? Everyone's talking about the Eagles. I think the Eagles have like $5 million worth of room and like 44 guys. Under
there was a lot of Eagles fans in New Orleans. First of all, I mean, the crowd was a significant edge for I don't mean like that played a major factor in the game. I mean, it was not 50-50. It was significantly shaded to one side. And so, I was in the airport with a lot of Eagles fans after the game, was, riding the shuttle with the Eagles fans after the game. And all they're talking about is a dynasty right now. And I think that Chiefs fans have experience, and us who cover the Chiefs have experience in how difficult this freaking thing was for the Chiefs. And I think as we analyze the game today and on Friday, we're going to talk more a big picture about what this game means. And one thing that should always be kept in mind is this was really freaking difficult. The Chiefs won 2 straight Super Bowls and they went to another. Like this was a hard route that the Chiefs just completed, even if they weren't able to actually get a three-peat.
Yes, absolutely. Here. And the Eagles are going to find out because they have Zach Bond, Josh Sweat, Milton Williams off their defense that are all free agents. Mekhi Becton, who miraculously, for the first time ever, stayed healthy in his career. He's a free agent, and they're going to have to make some tough decisions because they've already spent a lot of the money.
Yeah, but that's it, right? Their young stars are all first, second year, third year guys, right?
Yeah,
they got 2 more years to pay those guys.
Yeah, Brandon Graham. I mean, and I know they've played a lot of the time without him, but I'm just giving you the names. I'm not trying to. But yes, those are the biggest things that they've got to decide. But like for the cap right now, they're showing, I don't know. Different ones have different numbers, but it'll get tough. It'll get tough. Like when the quarterback. I mean, I think they're rightfully the favorite. The Chiefs Open is the favorite on FanDuel, and I don't know why. They're right. It's already switched around, and the Eagles are now the betting favorite. The Eagles are rightfully the favorite for the Super Bowl next year, but it's a couple of injuries, and all of a sudden everything changes.
There's no guarantee. There's no. Yeah. I agree with that.
We will break this down a lot more over the next couple of weeks. Break down the Chiefs and what's to come over the next couple of weeks here on the Red, Gold, and Bold. We're always brought to you by our great sponsors like David Starnes, Allstate Insurance. Give Dave and his crew a call at 816-781-7331. Our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. They're online at GannAsphalt.com. Our friends at Whataburger. Don't forget, Whataburger's open 24 hours a day. You can even get breakfast from 11 p to 11A. Don't sleep on that. And, of course, from our friends at Key Cannabis. If you mention my name, Soren Petro, to your bud tender at Key Cannabis, get 20% off your purchase. For Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, NFL.com, Sam McDowell from the Kansas City Star, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.